let's hop on this ride. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Mackenzie Dern, who this past weekend at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, in the main event of this UFC Fight Night, defeated Angela Overkill Hill by unanimous decision in 5 rounds. The scorecards read 49-43, 49-44, and 49-44. Mark, let me send it over to you first. Get us started here. Give us your take, your reaction of Mackenzie Dern looking as aggressive as she ever has, looking as good as she ever has.
Yeah, I will follow on both of those things. She looked awesome, and as far as the aggression, I know I predicted last week that we were going to see an aggressive Mackenzie Dern, but holy hell, even I didn't think it would be quite like that. I mean, she came out swinging from jump. She had cracked Hill within like a minute and a half. Before 2 minutes was up, she'd knocked her down. I mean, it was a whole different Mackenzie Dern. And we have seen her comfort in her hands growing fight by fight. We've seen these signs of the striking becoming a weapon at times for her. And this is the one where it kind of all came together, where we got to kind of see the fruits of the labor and the signs that we've been seeing peeking out. It came together in this one. And maybe the biggest takeaway for me personally is that if you remember after the last fight to Xiaonan, which was a close fight where she had some rounds and maybe let certain positions slip away, I had said that I thought a huge wrinkle in Mackenzie's game that she could add that would change things for her would be to add some heavy ground and pound. Her ground and pound has always kind of been a little bit like faint. I don't know how to describe it. It hasn't had the impact you would think she could generate, especially because she always kind of throws fairly hard on the feet, even though her striking was not so refined. And that is what we saw now in this fight. I mean, of course, she was still sub-hunting, and she was phenomenal in the transitions and the control and everything you expect from her. But there was heavy ground and pound now. There was big elbows coming down, thudding damage accumulating on Angela Hill's face. And that was a new wrinkle for Mackenzie, and it's something that I'm sure will open up submissions for her more going forward. She couldn't find one here. I mean, props to Angie. She did scrap the whole way. She was in some miserable positions at times where she absolutely could have chosen to quit if she was a lesser woman than she is, but she never did. She defended really well all fight, which also shows you the improvements in her game as her career has gone on, because she was not that level of grappler initially. But this night was all Mackenzie Dern. The scorecards told the story. It was completely dominant. And even though she didn't find the finish, she still walks away with what I would say was a pretty big statement.
Omar, bringing you in here, what would you say was the story of the fight, of this clash of styles between primarily Muay Thai attack of Angela Hill versus the jiu-jitsu prowess of Mackenzie Dern?
I think the biggest takeaway for me was the hands. I mean, when we talked about this fight, I don't know anybody who was talking about Mackenzie Dern potentially outstriking Angela Hill. And a lot of that was going on the feet, especially earlier on in that fight. I mean, her hands were straight, they were precise. And the thing that I love about that you can see that's super visible in Mackenzie Dern now as opposed to in her previous fights when she wasn't comfortable is her eyes. And she doesn't look away when she strikes, right? She doesn't close her eyes anymore. She doesn't look away. She's not fucking throwing with reckless abandon, hoping that she hits something with her hands. She's very purposeful with her strikes now. And she's still got a little work to do. She's not 100% crisp, but the improvements I think are exceptionally vast, and they're effective, which I think is the most important part. You do got to give props to Angela Hill, though, man, because she survived a lot of really disgusting submission attempts, especially once Mackenzie Dern was on top. She had a couple arm bars that were one tweak away from getting pulled all the way to extension. And Mackenzie and Hill was just holding on for dear life, and I think that was a lot of the story in certain parts of that fight. I think I gave Mackenzie Dern at least 2 10-8 rounds in that fight. It showed the resiliency of Angela Hill, but it showed the dominance at the same time of Mackenzie Dern. And as much as they're both dogs, man, Mackenzie Dern is just on a different level, and I think that was kind of what we talked about last week.
Yeah, man. There were some moments of that fight. I think early in the 3rd or 4th round, Mackenzie Dern just came out like a bat out of hell, got a takedown, and did some kind of magic with Angela Hill's arms and like wound up hunting for a triangle before you even blinked. And it was like, oh damn, that's what she can do. That's how good she is. And the better she gets at striking, the more and more she's going to be such a problem. Because like, are we going to take her down? Was Angela Hill going to like change it up and change the levels and like try to? No.
I mean, she kind of did. She kind of had to. She didn't really have an answer on the feet, and even then, she got chewed up on the ground. But she did turn into a bit of a wrestler in that fight.
She turned into a clincher, I feel. It was like the only spot where she was sort of safe. She was just trying to be clinchy, but then that let Dern kind of work trips and little off-balance spots and things like that.
Yeah.
But hey, it was definitely a testament to Angela Hill's will in this fight as well. She toughed it out. She took quite a bit of damage in this fight. Tough as nails, she showed. Absolutely. But it was just this was a showcase for Mackenzie Dern. She came out. I believed her in the lead up to this fight, for the media from this past week, of saying that she's been going through quite a bit personally, going through a divorce that apparently hasn't been fun, and she's mentioned something. I saw her on El Helwani talking about the courts or defending herself in the legal system. Something about probably going through some legal stuff, maybe with the kid or maybe with money or something like that, or with an estate.
Well, we were going to touch on it in the Sphere, but just to give you a little preview, it has to do with a little bit with money. She said it got really dirty once the money got involved, and there have been restraining orders involved in their relationship. There was apparently some domestic violence disputes and things like that. So there's apparently a history as to why that divorce happened in the first place, and then things have still been pretty confrontational afterwards too.
They both seem so happy and like smiley.
Yeah, he was always like there supporting her. It was I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah. Well said.
Unfortunately, a lot of those
you never know, man.
Yeah, a lot of the ones that tend to smile too much in public tend to be the ones that you got to worry about, I feel like.
But he's not a fighter. He was like a surfer.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
What if he was like, yo, she beat the shit out of me every night.
I think he actually did say something about how he used to get that he's been abused by her too, or something like that, and she was like, I defended myself.
That's ugly. That's ugly, man. That sucks. It does suck. But anyway, bringing it back to the fight, I bought into that narrative that she was putting out there. I was like, I think she's going to bring in a chip on her shoulder for this fight. She's going to take out that aggression in the cage, and that's exactly what she did, guys. So that being said,
her moniker has been for this fight. Her moniker was Divorce Dern.
Divorce Dern. Oh my God. We've had Dad Cerrone. Now we have Divorce Dern.
Sea-level Kane.
Sea-level Kane. She's the new legend. She's the new legend. Yeah.
The mythical creature unlocked. Fighter.
Well, let's talk about where Divorce Dern goes next in her professional fighting career, because this was a big win, a big statement win, I should say, by Mackenzie Dern. Mark, if you were the matchmaker of the UFC, what would you do with Mackenzie Dern next? Who would you match her up with next?
I actually am with her call out of Rose Namajunas. It feels like it is maybe a bit much, but to me, this division is just so tough to book because all these top girls have mostly fought each other. Everyone has a win over one and a loss to the other, and it's like all interchangeable for the most part. So as much as it's a jump for Mackenzie to fight Rose, Mackenzie is a star. She did look fantastic coming off that performance, and Rose hasn't fought in a minute. She needs to come back against someone, so I say why not? Let's do that fight.
I love that, man, because to your point, she is a star. Mackenzie Dern is one of the brightest stars in the sport, and especially on the women's side. And this is a big enough win over an established veteran in Angela Hill, and enough of a statement performance to be like, okay, let's do this. Let's match her up with a true marquee name in this division to get her into that upper echelon so that we can really start selling her more. Omar, what do you think?
So I'm gonna I'll be a little bullish on this. Carla Esparza is gonna be out for a minute, right? She's pregnant. She's kind of done, at least for the time being. Rose Namajunas hasn't fought. I don't really know what her deal is as to why she hasn't fought. I know she's been kind of doing there was a movie at some point, and she's been doing some other ventures and things like that. So I don't really know where she stands. So Mark picked her. I know Mackenzie Dern picked her. I'll exclude her from my process just because we've already had a pick for her. I think that Wei Li and Lemos is going to be an interesting fight, but I kind of want Mackenzie Dern at this point to fight the loser of Wei Li Lemos. I think that would be an interesting test to see where Mackenzie Dern is. I think Yan Xiaonan at this point has probably earned herself a title shot, so I still want to see Wei Li and Yan Xiaonan. I hope that that's the fight that ends up happening, and I hope that Mackenzie Dern ends up fighting Lemos.
Okay.
Sorry.
Any names you guys have for...
Way though, that puts Mackenzie out for a bit.
I mean, she sounds like she's got some shit to deal with as it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair.
What about Angela Hill? What do you guys think about what's next for Angie Overkill Hill?
I'll say Marina Rodriguez for Angela Hill.
That's a great fight.
It's again, it feels like it's like almost a little bit of a reward. I think Marina and Mackenzie are ranked like right next to each other. But again, Angela Hill has fought like everyone, and that's someone she hasn't fought. Marina has lost 2 in a row herself, so it's not like she's on the way up or anything. So I actually think that's a fun matchup that makes sense.
Great matchup. Both are going to stand up and strike. Omar, what do you think?
Who's this girl fighting? Man. I feel like I kind of want to see Angela Hill versus Tatiana Suarez, right? But Tatiana is already booked up against Virna.
John Janova.
Suarez,
Yeah.
I think, really.
So I think it might be interesting to see her fight potentially the loser of that fight. And yeah, because Mark makes a good point. It's like Angela Hill still still in the top 15, has fought a lot of these girls, and a lot of these girls she's fought relatively recently.
Yeah, she
and,
just
like, I
lost
don't
to
really
Virna 1 fight ago.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily care to see her against Michelle Waterson again. I think Tisha's going to be out obviously for a minute. She's also pregnant. Mm-hmm. They fought before as well, which I think was a close one at that. So
1 fight.
yeah, it's a weird spot for Angela, but I know Angela will probably take a fight. She's kind of like the Neil Magny of that division.
Okay. All right. Well, with that being said, let's move right along down this UFC Fight Night card. Congrats to Mackenzie Dern for the probably biggest statement win of her career over the very tough veteran in Angela Hill.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to the co-main event of this UFC Fight Night at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. In the middleweight division, Anthony Fluffy Hernandez takes out Edmen Shahbazyan by TKO via elbows and punches. The official time, 1 minute and 1 second of round number 3. Omar, start us off this time. What did you think about this performance from Fluffy Anthony Hernandez?
Yeah, man, this was interesting. I think a lot of what we talked about last week kind of came to fruition. I think that Edmen Shahbazyan looked good early. He was very crisp, very on point in round 1. Was able to do a lot of nice things in round 1, a lot of good strikes, a lot of good movement. But Hernandez is a fucking dog, and that was what we talked about last week. And he's a very unorthodox fighter, especially when it comes to the hands. He's trying to take you down. He's trying to work on his ground game, make sure that that's the focal point of his approach to the fight. But he can crack. And once he got past round 1, Shahbazyan started to slow down, and Hernandez doesn't. And that's where we really start to see the momentum shift. And he just ate Shahbazyan by the end of that fight. I mean, it just got progressively worse. And I think we had talked about, I don't know if I was the only one. I feel like I picked a submission. I feel like we all, or at least me and Mark might have picked a submission.
Yeah, I said round 3 sub. I thought I was going to get it too, but
Same. But he didn't even really want to risk it. I mean, he was battering Shahbazyan. Shahbazyan didn't really have an answer for it, so there was no need to try to sink in a choke. He could just
He threw
keep
the arm under the
wailing
neck
away.
a couple times, but
Oh
as
yeah,
soon as it wasn't there right away, he just went back to punching.
and again, I don't think he needed to. Right? It's like I feel like he probably would have went for it more if he wasn't doing work in the ground and pound as well, because Shahbazyan was spent by that third round.
Yeah.
But I felt like Hernandez just needed to keep working like he did, and he got the finish exactly the way he needed it to happen. I thought it was a great performance for Hernandez, and I'm telling you, man, that kid continues to put on these performances that just force people to take him seriously.
Yeah, man. Mark, are you taking Anthony Hernandez seriously yet? And what were your key takeaways from this fantastic performance from him?
Oh, I've been taking Anthony Hernandez seriously for a minute. I'm actually
Facts.
looking back right now because I'm trying to remember which fight it was. So
It was right after he subbed
it was
that
the Vieira fight. Yeah, it was Vieira.
Yeah.
From that fight, I was like, this dude's pace is fucking stupid. And then when he did it again to Josh Fremd, I was like, okay, we're all the way on board. But yeah, add another tired victim to the list. Like Omar said, first couple minutes of the fight, Shahbazyan was actually looking sharp as hell, to his credit. But once Hernandez was able to get a sense of the range and then close it, the fight changed and never changed back. It just became a grueling, nonstop, high-paced fight, also known as every Anthony Hernandez fight. And Edmen was trying to battle, to his credit. He had a couple moments in there. He got out of a bunch of tough spots, especially that guillotine in round 2 that looked tight. But the pace is just unbelievable. Like, there's literally not a second to breathe when Anthony Hernandez has a hold of you. And he does it again. He wins a fight via attrition, just via making your body not have anything left to give. And that's really what it always is for him. He just breaks guys, and he broke another guy. So there's probably going to be a certain level of fighter that can withstand that pace and maybe make Anthony Hernandez look bad when that pace is not a weapon he can lean on. But at this point, I am becoming very interested to see who that man might be, because this is a hell of an impressive run, and I'm loving it.
Hell yeah, man. Dude, I'm going to say this. Anthony Hernandez is quickly now becoming one of my favorite guys to watch. Like, he's on a card, I'm like, ooh, we have some fluffy Hernandez violence coming our way. I will say this, too. A lot has been said about his pace and his motor and his cardio, but my man has great technique. He's not just he doesn't just swarm his opponent and makes it a barn burner. It's that he overwhelms you with crowding you and constantly throwing techniques at you. He has disgusting elbows. He has so many tools, and he's good everywhere. He's just good everywhere. I thought Shahbazyan came out with a really good aggression in round 1. I think he tried to sort of catch Hernandez early, kind of catch him asleep, so to speak.
Yep.
But Hernandez weathered that storm, and like you guys both already said, he just overwhelmed Shahbazyan with his pace. And great win, man. Let's keep going with this guy and see how far he can go. That being said, Omar, segues are fun. How far is he going to go with this next fight? If you were the matchmaker, who would you match him up with at middleweight next?
It's a real goddamn problem, because I kind of want to move him up pretty significantly, but everybody is pretty booked up, which is really unfortunate. And with the momentum that this kid has, I really hate the idea that he has to sit out for a little bit and just kind of let things play out, right? Just to kind of throw a couple names out there, I guess. And it seems like, Mark, you probably have the same issue I do, trying to figure out where the hell he goes. But I do want to see him against guys like Chris Curtis at this point, right? The Chris Curtises, the Gaslams, the Brendan Allens. I think a fight with Joe Pyfer at this point would even be pretty fun. I think he deserves a little bit more than Joe Pyfer, but I think Joe Pyfer is a little bit overrated right now. I think his ranking is based not just on his performances, but also the hype that he's been getting as well. I don't know if he's earned the spot where he's at potentially. And I just think it would be a good fight. So I'm not really sure where you go with him, but those are a few of the names that I would like to see. So if he does have to sit out and wait till some of those fights, finish and progress, and manifest, then that's what needs to happen. But any of those fights, I think, would be fun and a great matchup for him.
Mark, what do you think?
I'm pulling the trigger on moving him up the line. Omar mentioned a lot of these guys are booked, so it makes it a little tricky on what to do with him. I'm going up to Jack Hermanson. I don't want him to fight another non-ranked fighter at this point. I feel like he's earned it. I feel like him and Jack Hermanson is an interesting fight. Jack was supposed to fight back in April against Brendan Allen. He had to pull out because he got some type of injury, but apparently it's nothing that's a huge deal. So I'm imagining at some point in the near future he's going to be ready to sign on for a new fight here. That's where I'm going.
Okay. Love it.
I like it.
Okay, let's move on.
Well, can I just say real quick?
Oh, yeah, please. Please.
Shahbazyan,
So sorry. Sorry.
Just because Omar mentioned it, my Shahbazyan matchup was actually going to be Joe Pyfer. I feel like they're almost similar guys in that they have looked really good at times, but Shahbazyan kind of keeps faltering. Pyfer, it's only been a couple fights. You're like, does he deserve this hype? I say put them both in there, see if one can knock the other out and get it going for himself.
At this point, Joe Pyfer is like, you roll the dice. He might get a knockout. He might not.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder, does anybody know what,
Great point.
oh God. What? They got RoboCop fighting Dennis Tululian.
Say it right.
Yeah.
Is that not how I say it?
Hobocop.
I thought you were saying Tululian.
Remember, Hobocop got KO'd in his last fight by a debutante, so...
Yeah, so now he's back to just RoboCop.
Yeah.
He's got to earn the hobo.
He got knocked down the line.
He got knocked out by somebody that doesn't have a wiki page. That's no good. It's no good. You know? All right.
Shall we move on?
Let's.
Okay. Let's see. At a catch weight of 120 pounds, Lupita Godinez secured the unanimous decision victory over Emily Ducote. On the broadcast, did they say Ducote?
Ducote.
Ducote. The official scores read 30-27, 29-28, and 29-28, all for Godinez. Mark, start us off. Give us your take on Godinez rolling and looking pretty good.
Yeah, so I went with Godinez because I thought the pressure and the pace were going to be the difference, but I envisioned it being more wrestling-based, and she was really pretty comfortable with the hands, which I didn't quite see coming. I mean, she came out of the gate looking sharp as hell. She was winning the striking from jump, crisp jabs. The 1-2 was landing over and over again. And it kind of became evident pretty quick that if Ducote was going to lose the striking, there wasn't a ton of other avenues for her in this fight because she wasn't going to out-wrestle Lupi. So Lupi kind of ended up, rather than using her wrestling offensively, she just used it defensively because Ducote did try because she had to change it up, but she couldn't do anything. So Lupi was just shucking her off, making her keep striking with her. And there was a point in the fight where Ducote did kind of start figuring it out a bit. She got Lupi's timing down a little bit. She had some strong moments, but overall, Lupi's hands were looking crispy. The pressure guided her, and I thought we saw some nice strides for her in that part of her game, and she certainly earned the win on the cards.
Omar?
I'm curious, Mark, how did you have that fight? Did you give
I gave Ducote round 3.
You did give Ducote round 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had.
Well, I mean, I watched it one time, and it ended, and I was like, I think she won that round. It's not like I rewatched it.
I never at any point felt that Ducote won any round, and I was just curious because I've seen a few people score at 30-27. Obviously, one of the judges did as well, and I've seen a lot of people score at 29-28. I'm not gonna die on the hill for the third round, but at the same time, I just feel like I never saw that momentum, that real shift for Ducote, which surprised me. I had Ducote winning that fight in my head last week, but that didn't go. I mean, that's not the Lupi that I had her going up against. And like Mark said, I think there were some real improvements there and some real comfort in her hands that I don't think we've seen before. So it's an interesting development, and it was really fun to see that side of Lupi.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I love it when I look good making my picks 5-0, baby. Let's talk real quick. Moving along a little faster now. What do you guys see? What's next for Lupita Godinez? Mark?
I will say take one of either Luana Pinheiro or Michelle Waterson. I know they just fought each other, and Pinheiro won and Waterson lost, but I actually think still either one of them works as a proper next step for Lupita Godinez, so whoever will take it, I think it works.
Omar, do you have any other bright ideas?
I think you give her Angela Hill.
Okay.
You can go in that direction.
I like it.
Wait,
you guys
didn't
want
she
to say
just fight Angela Hill?
Loopy?
Like, literally. Yeah, 2 fights ago. Angela Hill
For
beat him.
fuck's sake.
I had to think about it for a second.
I can't with this division. You know what actually would be a fun fight? Well, let me check first at this point because you never know. Carolina looked good. Kolakevich.
Yeah.
I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
You guys have anything to say about Ducote?
I'm going to move her down. She's lost a couple in a row. I'm going to give her Sam Hughes.
Okay.
I'm also going to move her down, and I'm going to feed her to Yasmin Hadagui.
Hadagui. Okay.
Like it. That's a good one.
Okay.
I prefer that one.
Okay, moving right along. A fun one. Joaquin Buckley gets another phenomenal knockout, knocking out Andre Fialho, his welterweight debut of the UFC Fight Night. Omar, start us off. Give us your take on that tremendous technique that he threw, that head kick, and finish him off with strikes on the ground. Really, one strike. The ref stepped in. What's your take?
I thought Buckley looked great, man. I think you could see that he's a lot more mobile without all that additional muscle on his body. You can see he's a little bit smaller than what he was before, which is saying something because the man is still goddamn gigantic. But he looked good, man. I mean, he was very bouncy, very mobile. I loved the use of movement that he had in that fight. It was a weird approach from Fialho. Apparently, he was talking about how he wanted to be more patient and kind of read things and things like. But it was too much. There was too much of allowing Buckley to kind of basically do whatever he wanted, and Fialho not really moving forward and kind of keeping his base. Right, he was backing up too much. And if there's one thing I've learned recently is that backing up is one of the worst things that you can do in a fight, especially consistently. So it was a weird performance from Fialho because I think he's better than what he showed in that fight. I think Buckley is a motherfucker, but I don't think that was a performance that I expected from Fialho. With that being said, Buckley's strength and his kicks are something that you need to watch out for. And that kick to the head was as bad as it gets, man. I mean, maybe an angle off, maybe a little bit tighter, and Fialho would have went completely out. But dude, you're nitpicking at that point. That kick was beautiful, and that was all she wrote.
Mark, what was your take on welterweight Buckley?
I had a very similar take, actually. I thought Fialho really let Buckley lead the dance right out of the gate in round one. Like, Buckley wasn't landing a ton, but he was at least throwing and giving Fialho things to think about, whereas Fialho was kind of just doing a lot of standing and watching. So I can't say I was expecting that. But Buckley looked good. He mixed in some takedowns. He couldn't hold Fialho down, but even so, it was still nice to see the strength and the physicality in the wrestling that Buckley gets to show off a little bit more now at 170 that he couldn't as much at 185. And then round two, they did start trading more. Fialho was opening up a bit. The right straight was actually landing, but Buckley adjusted, set up a picture-perfect head kick, and that was all she wrote. But I will say, you guys tell me what you think. I feel like I'm the only person in the world who was bothered by this. I didn't see shit about it on Twitter. I was not a fan of that shit at the finish from Joaquin Buckley. I mean,
yeah.
The announcers were saying, "Oh, Kerry Hatley was late getting in there." He was not.
He was
fucking
not.
late. He
was not
stepped
late.
in. He put his hands on Buckley,
Yeah.
and it was on Buckley's right side. and Buckley pushes off, raises the arm that Hatley's hands were on, and throws a hammer fist at Fialho. Like, what the fuck is that? And why is no one talking about it? We do not need that bullshit, and I felt like it actually put a stain on Buckley's win for me because it's the only thing I could focus on.
Interesting. I honestly did not think about that at all. I just thought that was sort of in the motion. I also thought that from one replay, it looked like the hammer fist didn't connect.
I couldn't tell if it connected or not. I actually kept trying to figure that out.
Because it looked like Fialho's head was kind of falling back as he was throwing it. I thought it kind of whiffed.
Well, I can tell you this. For all of the talk of intentional versus not intentional, regardless of whether he fucking hit him or not, the intention was to hit him while he was already knocked out. And I didn't care for it either, to be honest. I did notice it. And I don't think there was anything, it was definitely not a kind of like an in the moment kind of thing as far as already being in motion. Buckley kicked him, walked over to him like a serial killer, stepped over this motherfucker, and, almost jeered at him as he stepped over him, and then just calmly went and tried to hammer fist him. Like he that was pure ridiculousness as far as I'm concerned. And I do kind of agree. I'm surprised no one's talking about it. And I remember hearing the broadcast, and Bisping was on this broadcast, right?
Yeah, he might have been the one that was like, "Oh, the ref got there late," and I was like, "No, he didn't."
Well, Bisping was also like, "And another one for good measure." Like I was like, "What measure?
Yeah, you're right.
We were good.
They were. You're right. And that's why I'm pointing out what arm it was, because it's not like it was the left, and like he had already lifted and they got grabbed on the right side, and the left is just in motion already. Yeah. It wasn't. He got grabbed when his right arm was still down, and he shucked it off, raised his right arm, and threw the hammer fist.
Yeah, the referee was literally putting pressure on Buckley. There was a pushing motion involved to keep Buckley back that was then removed by Buckley, then proceeded by a fucking hammer fist. Like the referee had to then push him harder to move him out of the way completely.
And you could tell he was pissed, the ref. Like he was like, what the fuck?
Oh, 100%. And to be honest, he had every
talking about it.
He had every right to make a stink about it too. Like I don't think they wanted to get into the disqualified this, disqualified that, especially if it didn't actually hit him. You know what I mean? Yeah. But let's be real. Like Mike, in that situation, if the referee has his hands on him, right, and let's say Buckley does hit him, and now Fialho is fucking out cold, when he wasn't after that head kick, is like that might change things. You know what I mean? Maybe he gets away with it because he didn't land clean. But if he made the situation worse with a strike that is technically illegal at that point,
right?
I think it's a bad look, man.
Should be over.
Yeah, was over. Too, the referee was there.
I guess because it, like at first I was like, oh damn, but then when they flipped to a different angle replay, I was like, wait, I don't even think it landed, because I think Fialho's head was kind of falling back and it missed.
I couldn't tell.
But maybe that just made it kind of go away for me, because I feel like I'm usually the guy who utterly hates when guys follow a guy to the ground that's already stiff and like lands like one or two more hard shots to like a stiff fighter. I hate that. I think that's bad.
Dude could be fucking awake. If the referee tells you to stop, you stop. Damn. That's where I'm at. It's the referee
for me. Like I get it more.
That's so interesting.
When you follow a knocked out dude to the ground, if the ref doesn't stop you, because you're like, I can't risk that he pops his fucking head up right now. If the ref stops you and you shuck the ref off, I literally went from being like, yes, Joaquin Buckley, to be like, oh, fuck this guy. Like in one second. Like, that's I don't know. I really.
It's not good, dude. You guys, I mean, the referee's in there to literally be the guy to make sure that nothing crazy happens. There's a trust. There's like a one of those social contracts, like they say in John Wick, right? Like there's a trust and understanding in what the referee does, a respect in his decision making and things like that. And that's, to me, that's the reason why I think a lot of these referees need to be held to a higher standard. There's a lot of things that are on the line that these random ass men from random ass places are making for a lot of these competitors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And situations like this, I think they need to have a little bit more control. I don't doubt for a second that Herb Dean would have had shucked Buckley away a lot harder than that from jump, or even Jason Herzog. You know what I mean?
No.
I think
neither of those guys.
Push him off hard, like you typically see, because Buckley had stood still for so long. So I think
Yeah.
in Kerry Hatley's head, he was like, all right, he's not going to hit him. I just need to like put my hand on him so he knows the fight's over.
Yeah.
And then next thing he knows, he's hitting him again. And he's like, wait, what the fuck you doing? Like,
I
it was a
also
weird
do
one.
want to point out, I also didn't really like how that sequence ended up getting to where it was, right? The head kick was beautiful and all that stuff, but it was directly after a headbutt. And Buckley basically went like full Bobby Green and just smashed his head into Fialho's face. And Fialho was like, oh, kind of took a second there or whatever, and then they kind of went back into it. And literally almost as soon as they got restarted, Buckley ended up laying him the fuck out with that kick. So I wasn't super jazzed about that. I also think that plays into it a little bit, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But, that is what it is.
So to the both of you guys, it's worse when a ref steps in and is waving the fight off, and the fighter kind of somewhere in the gray area between, in his continuing motion, is attempting to land one punch, or even like is ignoring the ref a little bit. You think that's worse than when a fighter knocks his opponent out stiff and follows him to the ground and lands more hard shots before the ref couldn't get there?
Yes.
I think they're both not great.
I don't think the continuing motion. I think when it is blatantly after the ref stops you, like this was.
And again, we need to be clear.
The next fight we're going to talk about, Diego Ferreira, knocked
Yeah.
Michael Johnson very obviously out cold.
And yes, he apologized.
Follows him with a shot, immediately feels bad and apologizes. To me, what Buckley did was worse than what Ferreira did.
Okay.
Dude, you have to understand that the intention behind what Buckley did, the walking over, it was like people, you talk about it all the time, Mike, like how you would prefer guys to knock guys out, do the Mark Hunt, right, and just walk away.
Walk off,
Buckley
man.
did the motherfucking opposite. He knocked the dude out, walked forward, and tried to hit him again. Like it
Stepped
was,
over him.
yeah, dude. It was for me. It was a bad look. I don't think it was necessary. I think he would have looked harder just walking away, and it would have been a cooler look.
Okay. Yeah, let's move on. Speaking of, should we do we even get to match up, Buckley?
We did not.
Okay, do it.
Curious where
I
you
couldn't
put
decide
him.
exactly what I wanted to do with Buckley, but am I crazy to say Matt Brown? Like, I think that's a pretty cool fight, and I
It's a
kind of would
crazy
like to
fight.
see Buckley tested against like a gritty dude like that at welterweight and see how he comes out of it.
I feel like I would say that, but flipped around, I would say Matt Brown would be tested against Joaquin Buckley.
Yeah, I mean, they would be
Because it's
testing
such
each
a-
other, would they not?
Yeah.
You're saying like you think Brown would be a big underdog?
Yes, I do.
Interesting.
I also think that, at least on paper, I think he would be. Buckley's a flashy dude, man, and he gets
think
results.
Buckley'd be
And it's not to
favored.
say, and it's not to say Matt Brown doesn't, but I'm sure there's guys out there that are going to handicap it the same way Mike does, where he's like, Matt Brown's old as fuck,
I mean, that's why I said, am I crazy to say Matt Brown? But the way he looks, I'm kind of like,
He's been fighting very well.
I'd be interested.
I kind of want to see Buckley against Jake Matthews. Am I crazy for this? Am I wild for this thought?
No, that's
Because I feel like
that's what I mean. You
this is a
could
fun
go
fight.
a lot of places with Buckley. It's hard to gauge exactly, what to do. With
Yeah, when a guy exits a division with a little bit of hype, like he had some hype at middleweight, but then like it didn't go exactly as planned. And then
yeah,
goes
like he
down
also
in
kind of
weight.
lost a bunch, so it's like
Yeah. But now it's kind of interesting of like what you do with him at this new weight class.
But you got to stick him in at this point, though, right? He hasn't done anything significantly crazy as far as where to put him in the rankings higher than what
No.
he's earned in that specific division. So you got to put him right above Fialho. And I'm curious where Mark has Fialho, right? It's got to be in the 40s or the 30s, somewhere in the low 30s or something like that.
it's lower than that. So Fialho is 48 for me, and I have
Jesus.
Buckley in at 44.
Oh, you have him even okay. I figured you put him at least just one spot higher than the other, but that's interesting. You have him a few spots different. Okay, where do
Yeah.
you have Jake Matthews? I'm curious.
27.
Oh, that's a lot higher than I. Okay, sure.
Yeah, I mean, Jake has legit welterweight
Yeah.
wins.
He does.
He does.
Like,
is so
beat-
good.
He's just
beat
he's. I feel like he's what? He's 1-2 though in his last 3 fights. It's been on a. He's been on a bumpy ride.
Yeah, that Semmelsberger loss, I still can't get over, man.
Yeah, that was a bad one, dude. That was a bad one.
That one hurt.
That was the
Let me
end
say
of
one more
McGregor,
thing,
Jake
though.
Matthews.
I wanted to say one more thing about the whole late punch thing. I could just picture if we were to have any fighter on as a guest. One day, some fighter will say this to us on this show. You know what I'm going to say?
No.
It's part of the game. It's fighting.
Kind of that, and also like, you've never done it. You've never fought. I'm not a professional fighter. And I'm sure, I believe that, yes, it is very fast in there, and it happens very fast. And it's what we see as spectators is happening a lot slower than it is for them in the cage. So that's just my big caveat on all of it. Even when like the Jeremy Stevens of the world who like will knock a guy out and then jump on him and like do an elbow drop to a stiff guy. It's happening super fast for him, and there's a ton of emotion and a ton of adrenaline. So I'm just playing devil's advocate to myself, and
But that's
Yeah.
always
I mean,
been
I
my
don't-
point
I don't-
though. That's
I don't want.
I feel like
I don't
that's been
want
our
Buckley to go to
point when
jail.
when you talk about how you don't like the additional shots landed afterwards. My point to you is usually the referee's not there. Like that's not, you know what I mean? That's I understand your moral view of it, right? Like you can tell a dude is out and you should not be hitting him additionally. We have seen moments where guys kind of like Bisping, for example, right? Bisping versus Anderson is a great example. Bisping was half dead. No one followed up any shots, right? Mike, you were like, in your opinion, you probably would have thought that's a good knockout right there. Anderson should walk away, and then we're done with that. Bisping was literally folded over like a fucking lawn chair and was like breathing heavily, right? Had Anderson went in and like killed him, Anderson still would have won that fight. We wouldn't have probably the sequence of events that led up afterwards. But he didn't. And now he has to pay for that because that's now a loss on his record. Now
Well, he
there's
couldn't.
the argument to
It
be
was
made
at
that
the horn.
he let the rest of the fight like go and all this other stuff. But
He couldn't.
But my
It was at
point
the
is,
horn. He couldn't have
was
followed
it
up
at the
if he
horn?
wanted.
it was
Yes.
at the horn. It's a flying knee at the horn.
Yeah.
I thought there was fuckery though before the horn.
No, that was the fuckery. And
Literally
Anderson
drilled
like
him at the horn.
right?
then
And
ran up to the
Anderson
top of the cage.
Uh-huh.
ran off like he walked off, had a walk off knockout.
Yeah.
I see.
It's
I
okay.
see.
There are other examples that I see what you're saying.
But right. So I think that especially the referee has to be the deciding factor. That is literally the point of even having that dude in there in the first place. And so if you're gonna be in that position, what Buckley did was blatant and ridiculous. And it's not the Diego Ferreira thing. I have no problem with that. That shit does happen. And people are in the middle of motions and are in the middle of a fight and things happen. I totally get that. But now, had that happened while the referee's standing in between them with a hand on Ferreira pushing him back, yeah, I'd have a fucking problem with that. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Let us move on.
Mike, when we're late on this show later, just know it was because you took us on 10 minutes of a ride about all these stoppages. It's your fault.
It's true.
Hey, if you're watching this right now, let us know down in the comments what you think about blows after a guy is knocked out, or if a ref is trying to intervene and things like that happen. Let us know what you guys think down below. Okay. One more. Opening the main card UFC Fight Night in the lightweight division, Carlos Diego Ferreira defeated Michael Johnson by knockout. The official time, 1 minute, 50 seconds of the second round. Omar, start us off this time. Give us your take of the performances of these two gentlemen and ultimately the finish that ended the fight and ended Michael Johnson's night.
I felt bad for Mark. That was my initial reaction. I know that was a painful watch for him, but that was pretty much what I expected as far as the reliability of Michael Johnson. I don't trust that dude. I just
But you
don't.
thought he'd get tapped, not KO'd.
No, I thought he dropped the ball, period. I just thought Ferreira had more tools on the ground. It wasn't like I thought, that if Ferreira didn't get a sub that he wasn't going to win. I don't trust Johnson past the first round. That dude is hype. That dude is crazy. He's very, very sharp in the first round. And just like Shahbazyan, once 2 and 3 come, he usually shits the bed. Now, I say this fully knowing that I think he came off of 3 straight wins, but not guys like this, not these types of fighters. And anytime he gets put in these situations, Diego Ferreira has been away for a little while, but that dude is still a beast. You know what I mean? He may never be champion, but he's not a guy that's just all of a sudden going to be number 40 in the division either. You know what I mean? So this is what I expected. I trust him about as much as I trust a house that doesn't decorate on Halloween. Like, 0.
That's a new one. Yeah, this was pain for me in multiple ways. I always throw a small bet on an entire card parlay just for the fuck of it in case it hits. And I got every fight right on the full card except for this fucking one. So that hurt. And then it also hurt as a fan of Michael Johnson because he was looking so fucking good. He was doing exactly what I thought he could do. The speed was an X factor. Ferreira was eating 2 strikes every time he threw 1. I actually even thought Ferreira looked kind of sloppy and rusty, to be honest. He shot a couple takedowns, and Michael Johnson just shucked him away. And I'm sitting there like, damn, I fucking nailed this thing. Like, he literally, there was one where he threw Ferreira to the side when he tried for a takedown. And then 1 shot, and the fight's over. Like, he had literally lost the whole fight, and 1 shot, and Michael Johnson was absolutely dead in the cage. I mean, that was one of the most immediate turnoffs I've ever seen. Like, he was out cold when he was still standing straight up. His body had not started falling yet, and he was out cold.
Yep.
So
he was shut off.
I mean, incredible job from Ferreira to find that shot in a fight that wasn't necessarily going his way. Obviously, a big return to action for him. And, another one on the list of Michael Johnson looking good and then finding a way to not win the fight.
Yeah, man.
Johnson needs to do more with his defense. We know that he can strike. We know that he has power. We know he has speed. We know he has footwork. But and you can go back to like his any of his fights really, and if you slow them down in a lot of his exchanges, he has really bad tendencies, man. He does not put his hands back to his face. He drops his fucking jab all the time after he throws it. It's like basic shit, but the reality is the kid is usually so fast. A lot of these guys don't have the speed to return as effectively as you would imagine that they should. But that's why it's round 1 for me. I don't think Michael Johnson will lose a round 1 unless somebody really catches him, I guess. But Michael Johnson will always be the best in round 1. Afterwards, his flaws and his holes will show more and more as he slows down. And he doesn't have Khabib cardio, right? Like, he doesn't have these, or not even Khabib cardio, but like these intense cardios that allow these guys to go at the same pace all the time, right? He's not a Brandon Royval. He's not any of these guys. So the more the fight goes on, the more his flaws show. And that's why I can't trust him, dude, because he also doesn't knock people out in round 1 either.
All right. Let's talk about what's next for the winner here, Diego Ferreira.
Ferreira.
Mark, you have any names? Where do you go with him next?
I'll make an assumption in my matchmaking, which is that I am going to assume that Joel Alvarez can get past Mark Jacasey, who he is fighting soon. And if so, I think Joel Alvarez and Diego Ferreira would be a really fun fight.
Okay. Omar, you have any other ideas?
No, actually, I really like that. I like that fight. That's a very good fight.
Let us now jump into our lightning round. If you don't know, our lightning round is where I challenge Mark and Omar to give me their quick lightning takes over the results for the rest of
It took
these
a while on those recaps, Omar. Let's try to really lightning this thing so we have time for our rankings.
Let's do it.
We'll do our best.
Okay, in the featured bout of the prelims for UFC Fight Night, Mackenzie Dern versus Angela Hill in the lightweight division, Vyacheslav Borshev Borshov defeats Heiser Mahashate, Gesundheit, thank you, by TKO in the second round. Marco.
Mahashate gave Borshov the fight he wanted, which is what I expected him to do. He was willing to stand and strike with him. Round one was actually pretty competitive. Obviously, Borshov won it right at the end with the knockdown and the flurry. And then round two, he kind of got more comfortable, settled in, started landing big shots, and he put Mahashate away with a monster combo. So great job by him to recover from what looked like a really bad eye poke in that fight, and obviously gets himself a big-time knockout.
Omar.
Bro, that was like one of those eye pokes you see in the movie where they start bleeding and you're like, that shit doesn't happen. It definitely did. It definitely did. It's a great performance, man. I won't repeat a lot of the things that Mark said, but I'm not really sure what was better, the finish or the dance at the end, because I feel like at this point, that's really what I want to watch. That's really the reason I want to see that man win, is because I like that fucking dance at the end. It's so sick.
Yeah. His striking is filthy. If he can keep working the wrestling, and he's far away at this point, but if he can get it to an interesting level, he will be an interesting fighter.
Yeah.
Okay, Karolina Kovacevic, UD over Vanessa Demopoulos. Omar, go.
Yeah, I mean, we knew Demopoulos is a tough girl, but Carolina looked good, man. You know, I don't know what's going on with her and what she's found internally to give her the motivation to come back almost arguably stronger than what she looked before, but she looked great. She looked really, really good, and I think she took that fight pretty handedly there. I think she really outclassed Demopoulos in a lot of different ways. I think Demopoulos wasn't able to put any of her game into play, which she normally wants to take things down to the ground. And Kovacevic looked absolutely fantastic. I'm happy for her.
Okay.
Yeah, Demopoulos started off hot early, but Carolina took control after the first couple minutes and never really gave it back. The reach was a big factor for her. She was continually landing on Vanessa before Vanessa could get to her. The right hand over the top to conclude exchanges was landing for Carolina all fight long. There was more heat on her shots. It was just a very clean battering all around for Kovacevic.
Okay, at a catch weight of 172.5 pounds, Gilbert Urbina defeats Orion Koski. Did I say that right? By TKO.
Kosi, I guess.
Kosi? Yeah, I think so.
Kosi is what they were
TKO.
saying on the broadcast.
Yeah.
Okay, by TKO in round number 2. Mark, take it.
Gilbert Urbina looked great, man, in every single aspect. Honestly, better than he ever looked in Tough, in my opinion.
Yep.
I didn't think the guy I watched on Tough had that game to show. He was using his length. He had a beautiful takedown. He was an aggressive grappler. He was looking to punish Kosi on the ground. It was really a strong welterweight debut for him, and it never even felt like Kosi was in that fight to me. So a nice finish at the end with the rib damage. It was all around strong from Urbina.
Omar.
Yeah, dude. I have to agree with Mark. That's by far the best Gilbert Urbina we've seen. I mean, the striking I thought was really, really sound. He used his distance really well. He didn't overexert himself. He didn't overreach with his strikes as well, because he had Kosi up against the cage a lot of the time, but he was able to still strike, keep him against the cage without losing any of his balance or any of his position. So I've never. He was very sloppy, I feel like, beforehand, right? He used to spam a lot of hooks, not really using his jab a ton, very street brawler-ish, if you will. And I thought he looked really good in this, man. I thought he looked a lot more measured, a lot more technical. And it maybe has something to do with the fact that maybe he can train now full time. Maybe there's changing in his life or whatever. But his dedication to himself getting better has been very, very evident. I'm really excited to see where he goes from here.
Okay. In the heavyweight division, Rogerio Nascimento defeats Alir Latifi by a split decision. Omar, staying with you. You go first.
Yeah, this was an interesting fight, man. I commend Latifi for continuously fighting guys that are taller than him, because I feel like every one of them in the world is. But he just, he fights in a way that just looks so uncomfortable, but I feel like that's how he has to fight and how he always fights. But he's like always trying to reach for these guys, man, and he has such trouble getting them, especially if they can get a little bit of distance between them, if they have decent hands, and especially if Latifi can't take him down. You know, and he had some success throughout that fight, bringing Nascimento down to the ground. He uses wrestling quite a bit in round 2, if I remember it right, and was able to pull a few nice takedowns and control him from the ground for quite some time. But I think there's just too much energy that's exerted from Latifi because of how big these dudes are. And I just don't think he can keep that pace up for an entire fight for it to really make a significant difference, with guys that are that much bigger than him. So I did have Nascimento winning this fight. I had him winning rounds 1 and 3. I had Latifi winning round 2. I thought it was the right call. I am a little surprised. What did that ref give him? They gave Latifi round 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't feel like he won round 3.
I didn't at all.
Yeah, I'm not really sure I know this is supposed to be, I'm a piece of shit. I'm sorry. I need to see what they did on the on the MMA decisions really quick, and then we'll move on. Yeah. Almost 62% of these people thought that Nascimento won.
I mean, that's way lower than it should be. Like, I didn't think that round was close. I don't understand it.
Yeah, round 4 specifically, they have it at almost 40% for Latifi. So yeah, I'm not really sure either. I didn't watch it the second time. I did watch it only one time, but yeah, I had Nascimento winning that fight. Sorry.
Yeah, I did too. I thought Latifi was way too willing to back up right from the opening bell, and I get it. He was at a huge reach disadvantage. He was probably trying to, stay out of getting jabbed, but you could argue that's even more reason that he should have been crowding Nascimento as opposed to backing up. And he finally was kind of walking forward toward the very end of the fight, and he was having success. So you wonder what could have happened if he did that earlier. It was a fairly close fight, as Omar said. Latifi did work the wrestling in round 2. He was chopping the legs. He was trying to slow Nascimento down. But all in all, I just thought he got backed up too much, and he ate way too many hands from Nascimento. And I thought the judge that gave Latifi round 3 was an idiot. To be frank.
Okay. Natalie Silva, round 1 knockout over Victoria Leonardo. Mark, go first.
Wait, how are you just going to do that to the
Oh,
to
my
the
bad.
Chase
Oh, damn.
It's a baby aspirin. How are you going to do that?
Baby Asker, man. Lightweight division, Chase Hooper defeats Nick Fior by unanimous decision. Mark, take it.
Look, I don't have a great gauge on exactly how good Nick Fiore is. Fiore, I think they were saying.
Same take.
Like, obviously he can grapple, but I'm not entirely sure beyond that. But with that being said, that was still easily the most comfortable we have ever seen Chase Hooper on the feet. He was super aggressive. His hands seemed faster. He was still a little bit reckless with where he puts his head in certain exchanges. But I really liked the progression that we saw from him. And, of course, the grappling is always there. And this was just a really solid win for his lightweight debut. And he looked good at the weight, I thought, too.
Omar.
Yeah, so my take's going to be a little bit different. I'm not really sold on that performance at all. It was a good performance. There's no denying it's probably one of the better performances that we've seen from Chase Hooper, especially when it comes to the stand-up and his aggression. But there's been like some takes where like this Chase Hooper, this is the Chase Hooper that's going to make the top 15. This is the Chase Hooper that's going to go far. And in my head, are you sure about that? Are you sure about that?
You have the same take. We're saying the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I thought it was a good performance, but like, if you really, really break it down, right? A lot of what made that performance fun and exciting and like what you would consider a really good performance is a lot of the pressure and a lot of the strikes that he was able to volume and put together, right? How many people do you really think that shit's going to work against? I mean, honestly.
Yeah, no.
Like, it's at a lower level, that's fine. Nick Fiore didn't look like he had any answer to anything, which I don't really know what that means. You know, like Chael was said, I'm just sharing this for you so that you understand. Right? I don't know what it means. But I feel like, and I felt like this as soon as the fight was over, that as good as he looked, if that fight happened at somebody with any pick a fucking name, like pick a card, top 15, I think he gets demolished with that performance, personally.
Yeah, like top 40 probably. Like for what it's worth, I have inserted Chase Hooper as my number 66 lightweight. Like,
Oh,
I'm certainly not talking about any rankings for Chase Hooper here. I'm just saying, for himself, he showed some nice progression.
The internet is a wild place. It's a
Yes,
wild
it is.
place.
It is.
All right. Natalie Silva, round 1 knockout over Victoria Leonardo. Omar, go.
Listen, Talia Silva hit this girl with a little ooh-wee. I mean, she fucked her up. Mike, you know that noise. The ooh-wee. You know that noise all too well.
Quite a bit.
Bro, she was piecing this girl up. There were no single shots in this fight. There were 2-hit combos, 3-hit combos. Oh, look, it's a head kick. Oh, look, it's another one. I mean, Silva was basically just having a good old time out there, not having to worry about nothing, bouncing around, having a great time. And she absolutely slaughtered Leonardo. I loved that performance, and I hope she continues that momentum because she looked savage in there. Absolutely savage.
Mark.
Yeah, I was high on Natalia Silva already. Now I'm like, I don't even, what's after high, because I'm that. Like, she is a killer. That's back-to-back knockouts. Her speed was on a totally different plane than what Leonardo was. I mean, it helps that I think Leonardo's kind of slow, but she could barely even enter without eating combos to the dome. I mean, she just got worked, and it didn't take long. A couple huge combos from Silva over the span of 30 seconds or so to end that thing, and Leonardo's face was a wreck. So, yeah, great showing for her. And personality-wise, she kind of feels like she's like Amanda Ribas 2.0.
Huh. All right, one more. Themba Gorimbo, UD over Takashi Sato. Mark, go.
How about the pace that Themba Gorimbo pushes? Talking about pace earlier in the show. My goodness. I'm not exactly sure how high level his wrestling and grappling is. I think it didn't matter so much against Sato because the pace alone was just giving him problems. And I'm sure we'll give other guys problems as well. And then obviously he showed off the hands at the end. Not at the end. Showed off the hands in round 2, almost knocking out Sato. It looked like he had him. But either way, really nice bounce back win for Gorimbo after what was a disappointing debut after he kind of talked some smack coming into the UFC.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Omar.
Yeah, I wanted to like the performance more than I did. I thought it was kind of like a slow movie of sorts. He did have a good pace. He had a crazy pace throughout the entire fight. Definitely something that I think is to look out for. So, he obviously trains with Colby Covington, so I'm not completely surprised that that's the direction that he goes into when he fights. I don't know how long that's really going to work. His takedowns and his takedown approaches were not 100%, right? There's a lot of flaws in his takedown attempts there and his approach to his entries. And I feel like we've seen a lot of times, especially with the higher levels, that guys who don't enter correctly end up eating shit as a result. Colby Covington can sometimes even have... Colby Covington had that approach, I feel like, earlier on in his career. Later on, you could see he relies on the double sometimes, but he's fairly okay and comfortable just pushing you back against the cage and then just kind of pushing you against the cage and using that as a way to mess with you and take you down and things like that, as opposed to just shooting in nakedly, so to say, and potentially eating a knee or an uppercut or, getting Curtis Blades or something like that. So I'm not sold on Gorimbo. I understand what his game is. I understand where he's coming from. I just don't know how long that's his specific approach to that game plan will work towards guys at the top.
Okay. Me and you had a lot of the same reads on a lot of these fights. I mean, you said that way more eloquently than me, but that's what I was meaning when I said I'm not exactly sure how high level that the grappling and wrestling was there.
Yeah. It's always nice when we agree.
All right, well, that does it for our lightning round. And that does it for our recap of this UFC Fight Night, Dern versus Hill.